Chakshumathi, let's flatten the inaccessibility curve in education. Our philosophy is it is easy to build stronger children than repair broken men. Chakshumathi take me to Stanford, an initiative to identify the differently gifted students to help them to design their career goals and achieve it. Talk and discussion with Bhavya Shah, blind mathematician and STEM enthusiast, incoming freshman at Stanford University in USA.
Good evening, everybody. Am I audible to all?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Today it is a bit slow in people joining us on time. Normally everybody comes before time. Hopefully there will be more people joining, and also it is going live in Facebook also. Maybe because of that. Bhavya Shah, welcome you to the Sunday ProTalk. I'm very proud to introduce Bhavya. I think all of you already read about him from our message. He passed the 12th standard last year, and this year he's a freshman at Stanford University. Because of the pandemic lockdown, he's taking his online classes from home at Mumbai. He is a STEM enthusiast from his school days, and he also developed a methodology for mathematics by hearing. We call it like math by ear. And in the past also we had very good mathematicians from the community who couldn't do their higher studies in India. So they all went to US and abroad to pursue their dream and get the best qualification in mathematics, like Dr. T.V. Raman and many others. Bhavya also took a route like our elders, and we wish all the best to Bhavya for his wonderful career in future. We have started our journey in STEM education since 2012. We could very proudly say that we managed to bring some enthusiasm with the visually impaired students, and many pursue their career with STEM subjects. This year we planned a new project called Take Me to Stanford. This is basically to identify the differently gifted children from the early age, very early age, and hold them, motivate them, not only motivate them, motivate their teachers, their parents, and the community, so that the child can easily scale heights. Bhavya has gone through many hurdles, many tough times. He told me that one complete year he was out of internet because he was concentrating in preparing for the examination, qualifying examination to get to Stanford. Bhavya, I welcome you to the Sunday Pro Talk, and floor is yours.
Thank you so much for those kind words, as well as for having me here. It's a privilege to be able to address all of you today. Of course, Sir introduced me in large part, but just a quick recap. I just finished my high school and I'm an incoming freshman at Stanford University. I am completely blind as of 6 years, fully blind in both eyes, and I largely use assistive technology, NVDA, to complete my education. And in this talk today, here's the structure that we'll be following. We'll be starting on a positive note, then we'll be talking about 4 problems that I've identified in making accessible math education a reality in India. Then I will be discussing solutions to each of them, and then we will be moving on to my strategies and approach to learning and enjoying mathematics in high school. All right, then, let's start. I want to give you a few names. Robert Sheldon, mathematician at NASA. Alfred Menke, mathematician and cryptologist at the US Department of Defense. Lawrence Baggett, professor emeritus and mathematics lecturer at the University of Colorado. Pratish Datta, topper in the mathematics department at IIT Kharagpur. The one thing and the one characteristic that binds all of these successful mathematicians together is this, that none of them can see, that they're all blind, all face visual impairment, and in spite of that, have been incredibly successful in their respective branches of teaching, researching, and interacting with mathematics and related sciences. Now, why do I give these examples to you? Because oftentimes we get mired in how to do this, and is this even possible, and where are the boundaries, and what is the limit? And we forget that people have already been blind and succeeded in mathematics. So this has already been done. The trail has been blazed by those that preceded us. The question now is, why do we still wonder where the limits are when none exist, when it has been demonstrated time and time again that they don't exist? The question about how to learn math accessibly without eyesight is important, but is secondary. The mindset to knowing that it is possible, no matter the methods or the means, is far more important. I think role models play an important role in exemplifying that to us, because around us we have a lot of sighted people telling us our limits and what we should and should not pursue. And just knowing that such people have existed who came from similar challenges and backgrounds to do the things that we aspire to achieve is incredibly empowering. But there's no doubt that there are challenges and roadblocks that we need to be mindful of. Specifically in India, accessible math education is not a reality for the vast majority of blind and visually impaired students. And I'm not talking about doing a mathematics degree at university or becoming a professor in math. I'm just talking about simple high school level mathematics education, which a lot of blind students are not encouraged to delve deep into. What are the reasons for this? There are 4 challenges that cause this unfortunate state of matters as it is today. The first one of these is the lack of a positive precedent. Because around us, when we see blind people, we usually see them in singing, that our seniors dropped the regular level mathematics and science and took lower level, class 8 math as opposed to class 10 math, even if you are in class 10. That people who are around us struggled with mathematics so much that we feel like, well, there's no scope for us either. Might as well just take the easier path and get rid of this subject. We feel like it is not possible when the truth is that it is. This becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where generation after generation of blind, visually impaired students are surrounded in their proximity by negative stories and perceptions about mathematics and its accessibility to the blind, and therefore they fall into the same trap over and over again. But the second issue here is the lack of sensitization among teachers. Because if you have been a blind student in class 9 expressing your love for mathematics and your desire to continue studying it, you've probably encountered that one teacher who said, well, you might as well just drop mathematics next year because it gets a bit difficult anyways for sighted kids. You will not be able to cope up with it. that they tell your parents that we have taught geometry for many, many years, and we know that you need to look and draw a circle in order to be able to understand it. And therefore, we think it's in the best interest of your child. So please don't let them do mathematics. Might as well take up something like home science or IT or some alternative remedial easier subject, but not mathematics. The third issue is the lack of training and rehabilitation in terms of technology for blind students. Many blind students don't get any rehabilitation services, but those that do learn Braille and are taught to stick to it and be happy with it. But even those who are fortunate to be the few to get computer training are given it in a tokenistic and unapplicable way. What do I mean by this? The typing speed is often horrendously slow, that you're only taught keyboard shortcuts and not how to navigate on a new web page in Firefox's new version independently. You are spoon-fed facts, not developed into experiential learners who can adapt to new situations in the ever-evolving world of technology. The fourth problem is the lack of accessible math and science material. Print access laws in India are anyways not implemented all that strongly. But by the time organizations serving the blind get to making math and science textbooks accessible, there are already piles of English and history textbooks that are waiting for them, which are naturally easier to convert, and more students are studying it because they are mostly filled with plain text. By the time they finally reach H.C. Verma or R.D. Sharma, they're overwhelmed by the amount of equations and charts and diagrams, and hence math and science textbooks, more often than not, are just unavailable in an accessible format. Now, all these challenges do exist, but at the same time, we know that things can be overcome, that problems can be surmounted, and that success has been achieved. Now, how has that been done? At least in my view and my experience, these are the solutions to each of these. So let's go through each of the problems and address them one by one. The first one, of course, is the lack of a positive precedent. Now, the solutions to this could be to look for a mentor outside of your vicinity, maybe in another city, maybe in another country. They might have these different tools and strategies. If you are a math teacher to the blind in India, you can email someone in the USA. The internet and the increasingly connected world makes possible for contacting, learning about, and seeking mentorship from people whom you otherwise might not find in your surroundings. In my case, I met Karthik Sone. He is now working at Microsoft, graduated and doing his master's and bachelor's in computer science at Stanford. And I met him in 6th grade when I was newly blind, and he had come to do an accessible math and science workshop in Mumbai at the Xavier's Research Center for the Visually Challenged. And I thought he was a really interesting and inspiring person. I looked him up on the internet, and I was amazed to see all that he had achieved. And there were two things that happened to me that day. One, I knew that all of this could be done and that I was going to aspire to reach the same heights as Karthik. But two, my goal was not just going to be idolizing him and trying to match him, but to actively surpass him. Now, it's of course questionable whether any of that has been achieved, but I think the knowledge that there is a really high bar that you can set, that there are incredibly good role models available to you in the 21st century when it comes to blind people in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields, that's to stay STEM, is a huge morale booster in and of itself. I chat with Karthik sometimes even to this day, but more than asking him questions and getting his tips, what I know is that this could be done, whether I use his methods or develop new ones of my own that work better for me. The point is that this is doable. But the second solution here is to, in the instance that you don't find a suitable role model, that you find yourself in a position in which you can't find someone who has navigated those same hurdles, you must not give up and say that nobody has done this in the past, therefore neither can I. The response to be is chart your own path. Don't listen to those elder senior teachers who tell you what's right and what your limits are, but define them yourself. Be obstinate and be rebellious. And know that at the end of the tunnel, when you finally achieve what you wanted to, despite all those naysayers, the feeling is extraordinarily empowering. You can oftentimes discover really ingenuine methods to do things that you otherwise might have thought impossible. Let me give you an example from my own life that is unrelated to mathematics. Blind people are not often found in speech and debate communities, particularly in the world schools format, because you need to give impromptu speeches on the spot for 8 minutes. And while sighted debaters can use chits and pieces of paper to refer from, I did not have that luxury because I cannot use a paper or pen as a blind person. Now, it does not matter how I managed to do it, but I persevered with the help of my coaches and by racking my brain and practicing endlessly. Our team last year managed to win the world championship, and I ranked sixth best speaker in the world. It was incredibly empowering to know that I had been a pioneer, and without a mentor, without precedent, I had done something that I had always dreamt of doing. So know that if you don't find someone who has done something, do it yourself. Be the change you want to see. But the third solution here is to have a real sense of passion. In India, engineering is glorified and glamorized. I think that it's not meant for everyone. This has nothing to do with your disability, but in the instance that you do have a sincere passion for the logic that underlies mathematics, for the molecular level understanding you get through chemistry, to the real world applications of physics, then go for it. Don't let anybody else tell you that you cannot. Don't go down the easier route of music and home science if that's not where your heart lies, but go and be creative, be adaptive, use what limited resources and support you have, and don't worry about what you haven't got, because you will be surprised with the presence of mind and optimization of resources how much you can achieve. I will be giving you my own story later in this presentation to show how little I had, but how much I was able to make out of it just by applying my head to it. The second problem that we identified was about unaware teachers, teachers who dictate what you can and cannot do, and who think they are well intentioned but actually are hurting your own passions and your own academic growth. What are solutions to this? The first one is to just be vocal about your needs. What do I mean by this? When you go to a new coaching institution or meet a new teacher, you're likely, probabilistically so, to be one of the first blind people they have met. They don't understand what assistive technology is, how a computer works, how you do anything that you do. So you need to be demonstrative and you need to be explanatory. So go to them and open up a laptop, open up a Word document, start typing some random math expressions, and unplug your headphones and make them hear the super fast speech rate of your screen reader, which they will be really astounded by, and just joke a little bit about it, about how fast it speaks, how it still speaks in the English language. Break the ice. But once you have done that with that teacher, be patient, because not everybody is able to adapt to a completely new student with a separate set of needs. Therefore, you need to give them some time and space to develop comfort to you, to be more verbally descriptive. Maybe you need to nudge them a couple of times, remind them that they need to verbalize what they're writing on the blackboard, that they need to be more tactual while explaining to you a diagram or a graph. But give them that chance, and you need to be the one who is more mature, even if you are the younger one. But what you then also need to have is a sense of confidence. Going into JEE coaching, let me give you a little bit of context. JEE stands for the Joint Entrance Examination and is the entrance test to the Indian Institutes of Technology and other elite technical institutions in India. When you approach them and they ask you, well, how are you going to study class 12 level organic chemistry? I hadn't come across that syllabus and there was no way for me to know that answer, but I was confident that one way or the other I would manage it. So show that confidence. Let your grit reflect in the sincerity with which you say and your confidence of knowing that you can achieve it. The question of how you will manage that chapter that you are going to deal with 6 months later in your academic year can be discussed later. But the knowledge that you will figure out a way is very reassuring for sighted teachers. Despite all of these things, however great a self advocate you are, it is unrealistic to expect that everyone will come to the same page and be on the same boat and just magically be willing to accept you in spite of your disability. What is the next solution then to unaware teachers? Because you don't need someone to teach you that concept in mathematics, to teach you what similarity and congruency in triangles means, how polynomials and functions overlap with each other. The response here is to focus on the few supportive teachers. Because whilst not everyone is great, not everyone is entirely terrible either. There will always be that one math teacher. Maybe she is in your school. Maybe he is a tuition class teacher. Maybe you might find them as an online resource like Khan Academy. Find those few people either in your neighborhood or in an educational institution or on the World Wide Web who do provide accessible learning and who are able to sit down with you and come at where you stand to lift you to where you want to be. Even if you can find those one or two people to support you and push you in the beginning, supply those mathematics concepts and practice problems with clarity and accessibility to you, that can go a long way. Because whilst this is not an unsustainable solution, it paves the way for a more sustainable solution, which is the third solution that I'm going to talk about. The third solution to dealing with the problem of insensitive teachers is to put in that extra effort initially and score excellent marks in your exams. Raise your hands in class because you have already learned that concept and are able to apply it well, and then show to others that you know what you're talking about. Why is this the most powerful way of changing minds? Because whilst you can explaining how you might do something or that this is possible, the fact that you're able to do what you're saying in front of them is mind changing. What does this mean? This means that a teacher who has seen that you are topping the class in the mathematics paper will no longer say you should drop mathematics because you might be weak at it. The teacher who is telling you that you won't be able to understand circles can no longer state that same misrepresentation when you are the kid who is getting the answers to all of the circles questions fast and swift. Therefore, if you are able to, at least in the beginning, get those results, get those demonstrations in place, and be your own advocate, then teachers are not rigid people who will never change. They just need a little bit of pushing and catalysis in order to initiate that reaction, that relationship. The third problem that we identified is the lack of training and rehabilitation in assistive technology for blind students, because many of them don't have any clue. Many of them just rely on Braille, and many of them aren't sure if doing mathematics might be possible on computer when all they can do is navigate through a Word document. So here are three solutions to this challenge as well. I think this is a point at which organizations need to be particularly mindful in designing their curriculum of assistive technology training. And I think they can make a huge difference in this respect. So the first thing to be done is to prioritize assistive technology literacy over Braille literacy. Now, I understand this is a slightly controversial suggestion to make because Braille is traditionalist and it has its unique benefits, but I would contend that the scalable solution and the only scalable solution, that too, of expanding math access in India cannot be by producing tons and tons of Braille books in Nimit Braille pertaining to NCRT or Manjeet Singh or all of those other math textbooks. Costs, resource constraints, and all of those other logistical factors make that far more difficult. But if you teach students assistive technology and teach them how to use a computer, then the teachers can read their text directly. Then they can get the same accessible electronic textbook that was made for a student several years ago and reuse and recycle it. I think apart from that, there have been great benefits in terms of facilitating and enhancing my inclusive education experience simply by virtue of the fact that I used a laptop with NVDA as opposed to a Perkins Braille with tons and tons of Braille sheets which were fading away. The second solution here, having established the importance of assistive technology, is to focus on holistic learning as opposed to application specific or context limiting learning. What do I mean by this? I've often seen that people are trained specifically to use Word, specifically to use Internet Explorer, to know how to navigate in one particular scenario. However, that just doesn't equip them to deal with the vast majority of the other scenarios which they will encounter. Because I might need to interact with a new software that my university is using because the pandemic has struck and our classes are going online and new digital tools are coming into the picture. Maybe I have been asked to research for a class project for which I don't need to just go on Google, but on Wikipedia and all of these other new websites, in which it's just infeasible for me to have received website specific training. So instead of focusing on the keyboard shortcuts, I think focusing on the navigation concepts of the screen reader and how to generally interact in different situations in technology, whether it be the computer or the smartphone, I think emphasizing that is important. One way of achieving that is by hiring blind instructors, because that's literally what they would use to use their technology on day-to-day basis and are more likely to be able to explain and teach in a way that is practically useful rather than theoretically so. The third solution, and I think this is heavily under-discussed but is extremely powerful, is to emphasize on a faster typing speed. Because yes, touch typing is taught to most students because touch typing makes you proficient in the keyboard, and accessing the keyboard is a precursor to using a screen reading software, which in turn allows you to use technology in the first place. But being able to type is not the same as being able to type efficiently, swiftly, and in a time-effective manner. Why is this important though? I just want to give you a few examples. I will be explaining my notation system for mathematics and science in class 11 and 12 during my JEE coaching times. And without a fast typing speed, it would have been much more challenging. It would have been substantially more difficult for me to take live notes of debate speeches that were happening before me if I was not a fast typist. It would have been much more difficult in an examination which I was giving not using a scribe but on a computer, where I needed to quickly read through all of those long questions in an English essay and then type in my responses if I was slow and took my time to do it. Therefore, a fast typing speed is something that was instrumental, that I was not encouraged or specifically told to work on, but which just fortunately happened to be something I like playing around with, measuring and increasing. I'm happy to report that these days, I think my average typing speed is near about 100 words per minute. The final problem that we had identified was the lack of accessible math and science material. The fact that you might get your English textbook in an accessible Word file, or your political science textbook as a DAISY book, but not your math or science one. What are solutions to this? The first one is that the picture is not as bleak as it might sound. NCERT, the premier textbooks used across boards and institutions throughout the school life for students in India. If you look at its middle and high school level books, even in case of math and science, they have been converted into accessible formats. Where can you find them? You can find them on Bookshare, on Sugamya Pustakalaya. You can reach out to Daisy Forum of India, and I'm sure that Chakshumathi is also doing great work in this respect. People have studied these subjects, Oftentimes, this material has been converted into an accessible format in the past. All you need to do is a little bit of Googling, a little bit of reaching out, and there is a good chance you will find this by someplace. But also what is important to realize is that books in math and science are not made because they don't want to make it, but that's because there is low demand for it. If more and more of you blind school students ask for, let's say, a Lakshmi Singh or a Manjeet Singh to be produced in an accessible format, that leads to the formation of critical mass. And because so many students are asking for it, that is when an organization serving the blind is incentivized to prioritize its production relative to other books, to make sure that math and science textbooks, which are often left behind, are pushed up the pipeline and are made available in an accessible format. But the second solution, and I think this is where parents of blind children can step in, is to take this into your own hands. My mother was not tech savvy. She did not know how to use a scanner. She wasn't comfortable with editing in a Word document. In fact, English was not her first language either. But because I was blind and because I needed accessible textbooks and other sources would take greater amounts of time, my mother took it into her own hands. What did she do? At the incredible folks at the Xavier's Resource Center for the Visually Challenged taught her how to use a scanner and the Kurzweil software. They taught her how to edit and proofread a Word document, how to create a table, how to make changes in a spelling, how to run the grammar check, and how to make sure that contents which were previously missing could be added to that file. My mother was responsible for making sure that with a slight delay, I had my textbooks throughout my academic year and I was not struggling. But what parents can also do is to collaborate with one another. One arrangement that I've seen happening in Mumbai is when two blind students are having similar textbooks or operate in similar educational boards and there is overlap of the material that they will be needing, then parents can distribute the creation of the books. So maybe one parent takes care of math and history because they have a background in those subjects. Maybe another parent takes care of English and Hindi because languages is something they're more comfortable with. This allocation and efficient allocation at that makes it possible for accessible book production to be ramped up and not just leaving it to organizations who already have so much to cater to, but taking it into your own hands. Your child's future can be improved by your efforts. The third solution here, and this is something that you will not like to hear, is to type the textbook up yourself. Now, I did not have a bed of roses when I entered the JEE coaching industry. I had to type up my class 11 and 10, 12 material in mathematics and science, specifically physics, chemistry, and mathematics myself. So it's not possible to type up all of the text in all of the chapters, in all of the modules of all of the books of all of your subjects. But what you can reasonably do, and this is also where a fast typing speed alleviated the difficulties and pain of this arduous job to a great extent, is to focus on the important sections of a chapter, asking your teachers to maybe mark that in your textbook, to maybe just focus on typing the practice problems at the end of each chapter, the exercises that you need to solve, because oftentimes classwork notes are sufficient to have a solid grasp on the content of the chapter itself, and then coming back home and spending a few hours every other evening with a parent or a neighbor or somebody else who is willing to help you out, who dictates to you, and you just keep typing that all up. Again, this is a last resort, but is something I needed to resort to for 2 full years. And yes, it was a painstaking job, but I did it and I wouldn't change anything if I were to go back. Having dealt with all of these challenges and problems and reality checks and the solutions to each of them, which are effective and to a really considerable extent can make your life far more easier. Mathematics education in India does require to be innovative and use certain methods and strategies. What were the ones that I used? That might be a question on your mind. So let's answer it. I will be distributing this into two components. One, how I studied mathematics up till class 10, and two, how I studied mathematics in class 11 and 12 during JEE coaching. So I want to contextualize this a little bit. In India, I think mathematics is slightly difficult, but it's overhyped and it can generally be done easily up till class 10. JEE coaching, that is to say, preparing for the entrance examination to the IITs, has an extremely vast and rigorous mathematics syllabus for which you need to spend a lot of time understanding the concept, asking doubts, solving questions, and it's just really vast and matter heavy. So up till class 10, I'm not entirely proud of the way I approached mathematics, and if I had a time machine, I would change some things. What was the process that I followed to learn mathematics? It was largely oral, and my school teachers were really cooperative. I had a wonderful tuition teacher in mathematics. It's really common in Mumbai for all high school students to take math and science and history and English and civics tuitions in class 9 and class 10. I followed that herd mentality and it helped me out, I think. I also focused almost exclusively on the NCERT books, which is the standardized textbook, only solving the questions in those exercises, revising those solved examples. And I want to be clear, I got all the marks. I topped many of my in-class examinations. I scored 98 in the final class 10 CBSE in the mathematics subject. And all of that is well and good. I also want to point out that I did do geometry and I actually enjoyed that. And I've seen a lot of blind students omitting geometry concepts. I don't recommend that at all. It's a beautiful aspect of mathematics, ignoring which will hurt you in the long run and also demoralize you in the short term. How did I do geometry? I used wiki sticks. So let me explain how wiki sticks works and what they are. Think of a noodle, but that this noodle is a bit straight. It is flexible though, and this linear clay noodle that you have, you can bend and twist that, and it can just stick onto any desk or table surface. So let's say my teacher wanted to explain to me, I don't know, a parallelogram. She would take one of those Vicky sticks and then she would bend it in order to form a parallelogram. And then I would just feel it on the table and I would figure out, okay, this is a parallelogram. Maybe she wants to draw a diagonal in the parallelogram. She would take another of the wiki sticks. Many of them are given in one packet, and she would place that as the diagonal. And I would understand, all right, this is what a diagonal looks like. I think wiki sticks are really good to build that base. They're not a very sustainable solution, and I will be explaining what I did later on. But at least to begin with, you need, as a blind student, to feel all these visual things in order that you can internalize them well and later visualize them exclusively in your mind. I did not do the one construction chapter in class 10. So in that, you just are given a bunch of techniques to draw an angle using a compass and a protractor. In the class 10 CBSE exam, in the mathematics paper for blind students, they expect a student to write down the steps of construction. But all in all, I did all of the arithmetics, all of the algebra, all of the geometry in class 10 regular mathematics. I did that orally. I focused more on the NCERT, and I was just satisfied with the full markers that I was scoring exam after exam. But going back, I would change some of these things. The first thing is that I don't think learning math orally does justice to the subject. Only when you write down mathematics do you feel like you're able to communicate this intuitive logic that you're able to mentally come up with. Only when you're writing down mathematics do you feel like, oh, there seems to be a flaw here, and you come up with a doubt, and then you clarify that with your teacher and you deepen your understanding in mathematics. There are many ways and shortcuts to get to the answer, but only when you give mathematics the attention that it deserves by writing it down rather than just orally saying it, does that significantly help you in developing your understanding. That is not to say that math cannot be learned orally or non-visually, but just that oftentimes taking notes and writing down your solutions can be very helpful. The second thing that I would change is to not rely just on the NCERT textbooks. Now, I had the NCERT textbooks in class 10 accessible in MathML as a Word file, and I used those. I solved those questions, and those sufficed for my school level preparation. But this is a general tip. If you are thinking of pursuing mathematics later on in life, then solve questions from reference guides which challenge you to the core by asking you problems for which you have not been directly trained, but with a little bit of forethought, you can crack. The third thing that I would go back and change is to not treat marks with so much importance, because getting a full mark 30 out of 30, 5 out of 5, 80 out of 80 in mathematics is possible, easy, but is not a reflection of your caliber, because mathematics is much deeper than what you are taught in school. And if you want to, particularly as a blind student, continue studying it in class 11 and 12, then a big booster that you can give yourself early on is to have a deeper than average understanding of these mathematics topics even before you enter JEE coaching, even before you consider applying to a Stanford. So those are a few things that I would change. But what did I do in class 11 and 12 when JEE coaching came around? When I couldn't just say and mentally remember and orally do things because of how complicated equations could get, how lengthy a solution could be, and how time taking it would be to simplify, but do that all out loud. I had to adapt. Now, I did not have people to spoon feed the solution to me. I had to come up with it myself. And oftentimes, I think people look for that panacea where you have this new technology or this physical tool available only in the United Kingdom that we talk about. But oftentimes, low tech approaches to complex problems can be effective solutions. I had nothing fancy or otherworldly, and I don't have anything like that to give you. Yes, while LaTeX, Nemeth Braille, TaylorFrame, Infinity Editor, Infinity Reader, all of those are useful tools which I will be mentioning later on in this discussion, I was unable to employ any of them due to resource constraints. I could not use LaTeX because JEE coaching is extremely fast paced, and I did not have time to write down all of the dollar signs and backslashes and curly braces in order to render math in a visually appealing manner. I did not have Braille textbooks in which I was anyways slightly slow in reading, but which would have a huge pile if all of my vast JEE material was converted into that physical format. Therefore, what I used is something quite simple. I used plain text. I was able to represent even complex mathematical concepts, questions, and problems using words and symbols and notations of my own. I want to be clear, my fast typing speed helped me out here because sometimes these could be a little bit verbose. I also want to note that my teachers, who were all sighted, were able to pick up on what I was writing, even though it was a non-standard notation, and they could follow along and provide feedback on my solutions. But what did I do? Let me explain this notation system to you. For many symbols, like, I don't know, iota, pi, e, all of those, people often look for the word equation editor or the JAWS symbol list, or they want that symbol to be inserted so that it looks all right. But oftentimes in non-graded assignments, when you're studying a subject for yourself, what you can do is just type out that symbol. Instead of pressing a bunch of commands and looking up that theta symbol, I always write THETA, and it makes sense to a sighted person, and it's significantly quicker for me. But of course, mathematics is not just about inputting a bunch of symbols in their pronounced forms. It is also about representation. How do you distinguish between the numerator part and denominator part of a fraction? How do you write the nth root and the contents of that root itself? You just write it is my solution. You use brackets to differentiate between a numerator and a denominator. So numerator would be enclosed in one set of brackets, denominator would be enclosed in another set of brackets. And you just write, instead of root left bracket, the contents of that root right bracket, you write cube root, fourth root, fifth root, as in FIFTH. This might seem like a boring and uninspiring solution, but trust me, throughout class 11 and 12, this is what I relied on. And I was always able to get done with my practice problems, move through all of my mathematics syllabus at the same pace as sighted students. In case of graphs, I wrote down graph descriptions, parabola, rightward facing in the first and fourth quadrants, this coordinate intersects with that. I want to just take a moment to explain geometry to you through verbal descriptions. Think of a right triangle PQR. QS is perpendicular to PR, PT is perpendicular to QR, and let the point of intersection between PT and QS be O. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this concept or who thought I was too fast-paced, that's all right. But if you have been studying this chapter for the last several hours in your math class, then this is a really quick way of communicating that visual concept, perhaps arguably even faster than the time it would take for that teacher to draw this triangle with all of these perpendiculars and intersections and label those points on the blackboard. What is the general takeaway here? It is not that there is a panacea that you are in the hunt for, that India has not yet found that is being used in the American education system. It is just that given the resources that you have, given the time constraints of a competitive coaching, given the fact that you don't have accessible material at your disposal, you must use what you have. I want to elaborate on my notation system in two more key respects. Firstly, I used speech dictionaries, which is a feature of the NVDA screen reader software. So if you type SIN, your screen reader will say sin, whereas a visual sighted person would say sign. What did I do? I went to speech dictionaries, changed the pronunciation of sin to sign. Similarly, I changed cot into cotan because cot and cos was something that I was conflating accidentally. I changed the shift +6 caret sign to be read as raised to, and I changed EV into electron volt for chemistry. So I had all of these symbols which I knew what they meant, but I wanted my screen reader to read them in the exact way as my mind was expecting them, as a sighted person would be speaking them out. And thus I used the speech dictionaries feature. But back to geometry and visual concepts. How did I first of all acquaint myself with graphs and the conic sections that come up in higher education? Initially, your teacher would need to take your finger and draw out on the table what they're talking about, what they mean by an intercept, how a hyperbola looks, and all of those things at the beginning need to be explained. So take your time when you're just starting off understanding the XY plane in the quadratic equations chapter in your class 11 journey. And I would ask math teachers as well to be exceedingly patient at that point. But once you know what the X and Y coordinates are, once you know how a function can be manipulated to change its graph, once you're able to picture all of those in your head, you will be faster than any sighted student even in a lot of questions. Because you don't need to physically keep drawing changed figures and alterations in the graphs. You can simply visualize them in your mind. The way a function would shift rightwards or upwards, The way a line would move to intersect at 1 point, at 0 points, at 2 points, all of those things are much quicker when done in the head. And if you have that luxury, because that's fundamentally how you'll be studying, then make your best use of it. Let me summarize this. One, you need to type all of your symbols just using the full words, or differentiating between parts of an equation using brackets, or just coming up with an innovative and distinct way of representing a symbol. Two, you can use the speech dictionaries or dictionary manager in your screen reading technology to make certain symbols be pronounced a certain way, in a way that maximizes your comprehension and helps you sift through content quicker. The third is that initially you may need to take extra time to just get a feel for the XY plane, the graph, and the new conics that you are just beginning with. But once you're more comfortable with them, focus on visualization and mentalizing all that you are learning, because your brain is more powerful than a piece of paper. And the last thing to note is that verbal descriptions are very powerful. It's not always possible for your teacher to switch seats and come to you and take your finger and draw it individually for you. While that is sometimes necessary, and teachers should be willing to go the extra mile in those circumstances, I think in the vast majority of cases, just labeling a bunch of lines and angles and triangles and circles and points is sufficient to communicate all of the nuances of a mathematical figure. I want to stress, these methods have been tested and have succeeded for me. Of course, other students might find alternative techniques, and you should definitely consider them. But these have worked in helping me get a 98 in class 10, a 97.4 percentile in the mathematics subject in JEE Mains, in getting a 97 in class 12 HSC, in scoring a 5 out of 5 in the AP calculus exam, in scoring an 800 out of 800 in the SAT subject test in mathematics. I have learned my mathematics, I've enjoyed it, and I'm excited to continue exploring that at Stanford. But what are some other tools that you can think of and try out? Whilst these are not things that I have myself used, I think they're worth checking out. LaTeX is where you get to write code, and then you press a command, and then all of your mathematics converts into the same way a sighted student would be writing it on paper. So the numerator and denominator would be positioned relatively vertically to each other, and symbols would appear in the way that they're typically written, and visual appeal and sighted standards would be met. The second thing you can try out is an abacus. When I was sighted, I used the abacus and I played around a lot with it, and I was good at it, enjoyed it thoroughly. After I lost my sight, I just happened to incidentally cease its usage and I never got back to it. But I think if you are particularly young, then the abacus is a wonderful tool that many blind students I've seen explore. The third thing, of course, is Nemeth Braille. I am more skeptical of using Braille in the context that I passed through, but there is a specific code, not the usual English Braille, but Nemeth Braille, Nemeth, which you can learn, which you can practice with. A lot of blind students report that they're able to have a much more direct, tactile understanding of mathematics when they're doing that with their fingers all of the time. The fourth thing is a Taylor frame, which is kind of a combination of an abacus and Nemeth Braille, because it involves touch and it allows you to represent different mathematical concepts through a bunch of grid slots in a tactile way. So the Taylor frame is also worth checking out. In my case, I needed speed, I needed efficiency, I needed something that my teachers could understand, and I needed something that was going to sustain me throughout the 2 years of JEE coaching without needing me to constantly retry options and change paths. So I figured out that figuring out a way myself of just notation in standard ways, but using full words and visualization rather than tactualization was working great for me. But whilst my journey has been fairly smooth, because whilst not everything has been great, lots of things have been. Supportive teachers, my parents who were always there for me, folks at the XRCVC, lot of mentors, and just the will to continue pushing forward internally. I think the ground reality in India for the vast majority of blind students is not that optimistic and awe inspiring. Even today, blind students are encouraged to drop mathematics after class 8. They are not given the support to learn, to understand, and to excel in mathematics in their school systems. They're not given the textbooks or resources to refer to in order to develop an interest in the subject. Therefore, in order to bridge these gaps, I have started Math by Ear. Math by Ear is a series of audio lessons that are available online on YouTube as we speak, in which I teach mathematics in a way that can be orally and mentally conceptualized. I supply all of the logic behind what is happening, the why, not just the hows, also a lot of practice questions, illustrations, and most importantly, an accessible way for the blind to understand math from a blind student himself. Therefore, if you're interested in Math by Ear, I would love it if you could just go on Google and look up Bhavya Shah Blind Mathematics on YouTube, and you should be able to locate it. There are other resources as well. Khan Academy, in which the teacher is quite oral. You will find NCERT textbooks now made accessible, so you can refer to those. And all in all, different people have different strategies and different contexts require different approaches. But the most important thing is to have a solid foundational understanding in mathematics. In Math by Ear, I will be targeting middle school and high school level mathematics for the simple reason that even if your pursuits are not in line with the IITs or the medical field or economics, even still, if you are applying for any other course, if you are appearing for an unrelated competitive examination, more often than not, there will be a mathematics section, a logical reasoning component of it. So get a feel of mathematics, play around with those numbers and shapes, and see how you find them. And when you see that you can understand it to the same extent as a psychic student, if not more, when you get to know how logical and fascinating results it can provide, that is when mathematics will truly be accessible to all blind and visually impaired students in India. You have mentors, you have precedents, resources are on the rise. I'm working on Math by Ear. For all of these reasons, don't give up on your dream. And if your dream is mathematics, then definitely not. That is it from me. I would like to open up the forum for questions. And before that, if there are any remarks from Ram sir.
I have one question that what things should be followed to compete with the diagrams of science, and how can a blind understand the diagrams of science?
So I think it is similar to the approach that is used in mathematics. I want to give you a few examples to illustrate this.
Which sources should be followed to do it?
I don't think there's a specific source that I would recommend. I would suggest spontaneously coming up with a way to analogize it to something the blind student already has a picture of. So a circle is like a clock, and a sector is like the angle formed between two hands of the clock. In case of solid state in chemistry, they're just a bunch of cubes and 3D figures in which the atoms are located at different points of that cube. So I don't think there is a specific reference list that needs to be copied for best results, but it's just that what is that blind student able to relate to? Come up with that, think of that, and you will be able to communicate the most complex of mathematics and scientific concepts through those means.
As you told, the source of math that is your YouTube channel or Khan Academy, uh, which source should be followed to do science?
In my case, I think I relied mostly on my school teachers to study science. Whilst I'm sure there are accessible science resources on the internet as well, I think at this point, those that are available within our education system, the usual textbooks and reference guides should suffice.
Thank you.
Thank you for those questions.
Hello, Bhavya. This
Hello.
this is Nibin Matthew, and I'm from Triple ITB Bangalore, Triple IT Bangalore, and I'm one of the fan and one of the follower of you, and would like to ask one question that it's not about mathematics rather than more than it's about the brain. You say something about how the brain perceives this math, some kind of things. So have you gone through any training or any specific thing related uh, with the how brain perceives these kind of things, like the mathematics or the unusual things for people with visually challenged? Have you gone through any training for that?
The funny answer to that question is no, not at all. Because the beautiful part of mathematics is that it's kind of a sense that we already have, but just don't know. So oftentimes I've noticed throughout my JEE coaching journey, my teacher is starting to describe the next question, and I've already figured out what the figure is supposed to look like. And mathematics is just something that you get once you explore more of it. It's not something that you need to
That's
teach or follow a specific format of. So I think if you know what I mean, if you explore it, then
Understood. Yes.
yes.
Yes. So it is you yourself generate all these things, right? So it's
Yes.
pretty indigenous to you.
Yes.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I also want to just clarify that this is not something unique to me as a person, because oftentimes what people have is to classify success stories as the exceptions rather than having the potentiality to be the norm. I think most blind students, if they have an aptitude for mathematics, independent of their visual impairment, can get a hold of these figures in their brains, picture them in their head, and manipulate them.
That's true.
To add something extra on this, actually, it's based on the requirement. He has a requirement, and if there is no solution, you bring your own solutions. He has come up with his own solutions to learn that. That is like somewhat like it is also, you can say, somewhat like innovation also. Okay, creating
pretty correct. Pretty correct. I was saying like it's a user-centric design kind of things. It's quite interesting.
Yes, yeah. Okay, actually, I want to appreciate him on the work he has done. He has done his own innovation, we can say. So it's everyone to do their own. If they are never stop where they are. Try to innovate something and find out some solution for this. Was it clear?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Bhavya, Jyotish is our mathematics mentor.
Hello,
Okay.
sir.
He is also visually impaired. He's an MSc Maths guy. Okay.
Wonderful.
Okay. Any other questions, friends?
Sir, am I audible?
Yes, go ahead.
So I have some questions related to this era of online education. In our current scenario, all education system is transferred to online. So especially in the case of mathematics in 11th and 12th, there is some more challenges like, in classroom, teachers are most often using inaccessible contents for, like for representing the things. In my case, I'm requesting to my teacher, and the teacher is helping me to get the content. More than that, if you have any solution to suggest, especially in online education, to adopt for getting all content out of the screen of our teacher. First question.
Sure. I think one limitation that is introduced here is that it becomes more challenging to access the content that your teacher themselves are producing. But at the same time, because everything is virtual, it opens up a much wider pool of resources. What do I mean by this? MOOCs, massive open online courses on edX and Coursera, there's a very good chance that the topic you want material on and that you want to study is already covered by a significantly more experienced faculty on one of these online course platforms. During my JEE coaching journey, I found out websites like Ask IITians, which rendered their content in MathML and thus was screen reader friendly. So Google different resources, a lot of it will be inaccessible, but some will be accessible and you need to focus on maximizing the utility that you can extract from them. Work with your teachers, of course, to get as much of their content and notes in an accessible format, and that is helpful. You've got OCR software like Kurzweil on the mobile phone. You've got software like Envision AI, SuperSense, and Kaibo. You've also got specific math and science OCR software like InfTReader, which can convert inaccessible image-based content into text-based content. So that is also an avenue worth exploring. But all in all, try to take this as a positive and exploit the additional resources that have now opened up to you as a result of you now needing to rely on the internet and the digital world as opposed to the physical realm.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for your answer. My question is more specific in the sense like, while teacher is presenting in classroom itself, we can ask to a friend like what he's written in the board or in the screen. But in our perspective, uh, there is no such like resources available. So in my case, I'm using some OCR solutions for understanding the teacher, what the teacher is presenting. So if you have any other solutions to overcome this challenge, this is in more specific in the case of deaf blind, uh, the caption facility is available in many video conferencing applications, but the screen sharing facility, what the teachers share, that is becoming more inaccessible in this special scenario. So if you
Thank you
have
for
any
clarifying your question. Yes, there are two suggestions to be made here. Firstly, ask your teacher to send you her slides in advance. So they can just send you the PPT based off of which they are teaching or the content that they are referencing whilst teaching. And if you have the source file on your computer, not accessing that by screen share like other students, but you have that file on your computer and you can open that, I think that can be really, really helpful. But the second suggestion to be made here is that even in a classroom, it is ideal if the teacher is verbalizing their teaching as opposed to a classmate needing to take time out of their attention span and make the extra effort themselves. So if your teacher can not just online, but also when you return to physical classroom, say what they're writing on a blackboard or what they're pointing at on the screen, then I think that can be helpful.
thank you very much. So this could be helpful for our future. Thank you.
Thank you for that question.
Bhavya Harun is one of the technology kids in the blog, and he was doing all our sessions on IMT editor and IMT reader and all those accessible tools during last 60 days of our training program. He just
Great.
completed 10th standard. Probably, if everything goes well, you will meet him at your college, maybe in another 3 years' time.
Sure, looking forward.
Okay, Bhavya. Good evening. Good afternoon. Good
Good
evening.
evening.
Sorry. Good evening. Yeah, this is a organized top that you can call me Peace from Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I started listening to your audio lessons on YouTube last month or so, and I was really, really impressed with whatsoever because I'm still a student of high school here in Nigeria, and I am really falling in love with mathematics because I would love to study computer science. But my
Mm-hmm.
question is, how do we get in touch with you? How can we reach out to you? Maybe there's a particular question we want to ask.
Sure, I can drop my contact information in the chat.
Okay. No problem. I'm done. Thank you very much.
Sure, looking forward to hearing from you.
You can also contact us if there
Okay.
is
Yeah.
support you
Yeah.
want from Bhavya or any of other resources. You are in which grade at the moment?
What is it?
If you want any other resources, also from our group of vendors, we
Book.
happy to provide to you. Okay.
Yeah.
And which grade are you in? You're in which grade at the moment?
What is
which year? You're in which year in the school?
No, Nigeria.
I know that. Nigerian, which year in the school? Like which grade are you in?
Okay. I'm my second to last year. I'm in SS2. Just like it's saying, like 11th grade. I'm 11th grade.
Okay, 11th grade. Great. Okay. So you are in touch with Destiny.
Destiny?
Yeah.
Destiny from where?
From Nigeria.
Destiny, what is her name?
Destiny Kushava?
No.
Destiny Chukuma.
Yeah.
Destiny Chukuma.
Yes.
Destiny Chukuma, that's right.
Yeah, and I know him from somewhere. I know him as in a group, but I don't know him as a person.
Okay. Destiny is with us for last training programs also, and we will be happy to give you also technology training if you wish to. No issue.
Oh, I'll be interested. I'm much interested.
Also, Mr. Junaid from Nigeria also joined us. That's one of the...
Mr. Junaid?
Yes.
Yeah.
Emmanuel.
Yeah, Mr. Derbug. Yeah, I know him. So
yes.
Is he here?
Today I didn't see him here.
Okay.
Thank
you very much.
Good. That is really good. Really good.
Good luck with your math and computer science endeavors.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Any other questions? Our question master Ashwin doesn't have any question.
Especially in come to math. Ashwin, go on.
No.
No,
No, sir.
Okay.
What happened to you?
Okay. Ashwin is a 7th standard student. Okay. Bhavya. He's from Chennai. He used to always ask me about how I do geometry. So you have given him a clear idea now.
Right.
And his mother, as you said about your mother, almost 100% same to your mother is Ashwin's mother, Hema. I'm really thankful to her for taking care of the child and making sure that his contents are made accessible for him. All those things. Because every parent should open their eyes and see how the smart kids in the community is become smart because their parents are there with them. Great. Any other questions? Govind? Govind is a bit silent today.
In chat box, there is so many wishes for you. Like so many wishes. Have you read it?
I will read it for. Yeah. Okay. Husna Amin from Trivandrum. She said, "Hello, Bhavya Shah. I'm really glad to listen to you. It has been a wonderful session full of practical chunks. During my schooling, my ambition was to become a mathematics teacher. But due to the reasons stated by you, I'm now an English teacher. Thank you for this splendid talk."
That is unfortunate, but hopefully the generation that follows you
Yeah, yeah,
can do what they desire.
yeah, yeah. And Ovia from Neyveli, she said, glad to hear Shah Anna. Anna means, what the meaning of Anna? Big brother.
No. Oh, all right.
Anna means
Oh,
big
right,
brother.
right.
It's a Shah Anna because Ovia just completed her 10th standard with a full grace of all A pluses kind of thing. And she wrote the examination using a computer. That is a beauty.
Congratulations.
She is the first girl to do this in Tamil Nadu. Also, Harun also wrote all his examinations using computer in Kerala.
Well done.
Well done, well done, well done, well done. Okay, Nibin Matthew said, okay, no, that's all done. And she said, brilliant. Anshi, you don't have any questions? Normally you come up with a lot of questions.
I don't have any questions. All I wanted to say right now is you are an inspiration to kids like me. You're a great role model. Thank you. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Thank you so much, sir. That's what I
Don't
had to
call me
say.
sir. Just call me Bhavya, but thank you so much for those kind words.
You're welcome.
Great. Yeah, great. And she is a 10th standard student this year. We have put a lot of hope on her. So she's in a little stress, but she will make it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Good luck.
Good luck. And
Thank you. I appreciate it.
yeah. Any other questions from anyone else? Matthew, you're a bit silent.
No questions, sir. Actually, most of the ways which Mr. Bhavya Shah had told us, we are familiar with all this, but couldn't actually implement it in an appropriate way. That was happening, and now I'm recognizing my fault. That is what is happening.
Good.
So
Okay.
I must come up with different solutions.
Yeah. So hereafter, at least the new generation will follow the tracks made by Bhavya and the seniors. That is great.
Yeah, initially I was having a barricade in front of me while I was thinking about math. Just it was near me and I couldn't see it. I was the real blind and math was not blind to me.
You are good. Excellent comment.
Yes.
It's just a factor, a good relation with your teacher and a good relation with your environment. That's just required. And everyone is possibly able to do that, right? So
everyone
I'm
wants
understanding that learning good math can also make you a good student, a potential student.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Everyone wants that insight. So that sight is required. That sight is required for everyone. Insight. So the way you see things internally, if you see things, max is nothing. Simple.
Yeah, definitely. I was a math blind person.
Okay, here what I should say, there are two big take home Bhavya has given today. One thing, how much good you are in your subject or all on your studies, you need to have an excellent communication terms with your teachers. If you don't have a good communication terms with your teachers, quite often you will be put down by your teachers or your class. So this is one great lesson we need to teach all the youngsters, that how open they should be with their teachers. And most of the teachers, for the first time, whenever they handle a child with visual impairment, they don't know what to do. They've got a full raw coconut in their hand. Teach them how to peel it, how to break it, and bring the sweet water. So this is one of the major communication tools which we need to teach all the children who are into studies. Because the moment they are into an inclusive school, because the other schools are hopeless because the teacher also don't teach anything. So special schools, no way, we don't need to mention any of those things. But in the inclusive school, most most of the time, you will come across a teacher who doesn't have any experience in handling such students. So you have to educate them, and that is also one of the biggest part of the parents, because parents also should take a special interest in that side. Whenever the new school season starts, they should meet all the teachers and do a small communication prep pack. It can make a big difference during the classes. Am I correct, Bhavya?
I agree with you. I just think one thing to add is that parents at a younger age should be doing some of the advocacy on behalf of their child. But as they grow older, as they move into 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, they should be training and encouraging their children to become self advocates. Because oftentimes the problems and confrontations and meetings you will have will happen on the spot, and you can't have an external agent intermediating all the time. And therefore, I think if the child is trained to be a self advocate, that is when the world around them can change for the better.
Absolutely, absolutely. You said that. Excellent.
Also, I can say one thing. In my life, Chakshumathi played a major role for molding this attitude more than everything. Because every time, Ram sir say, go and do, go and do, go and do. So I'm confident enough now. So that is the one thing Chakshumathi is grateful in this area. I can say.
All
Thank you
what
so
we
much for
need,
the
we
great
need to
work that
build
you do
some
at
confidence.
Chakshumathi.
Thank you, Bhavya. And we need you quite often hereafter in many of the, because we have a couple of projects. One project is called Creating 1001 Annie Sullivan, because this is something, a teacher training program. We select a few of the good schools and science and math teachers from those schools and give them in an orientation, maybe for an hour. That is more than enough. That will make them like, it will open their insight on how to talk to such a student the way he understands.
Mhm.
So this is one, and certain maybe one or two training programs. I may request you to come 10 minutes, 15 minutes and experience, share your experience and give your insight.
Sure.
So this is one area. Then another area we want to do it for the parents, because now we have started a new project called Take Me to Stanford. It's not that I'm going to put, or we are going, Chakshumathi is going to push all the students to Stanford. No, it is something, an iconic image which we want to show to the parents and the students, that you have to reach to a education place, to an university of that caliber in whatever subjects you want to study. Take for the best university and go and get it and get a career builder from there. So this is one project which we are starting. I may request you maybe in a later stage uh, for some other talks with the parents and the society, because we need the teaching community, like external tuition communities, those who prepare for the entrance coaching. All those people also should aware there are such kids also aiming at a top position. So I may request you, and we will join hands in doing many things.
Would be happy to
XRVC is
participate as much as I can,
yeah,
and let's keep in touch via email.
yeah. Whenever time permits you, we will request you, because XRVC is like if I mean wing of the other side of the bird of Chakshumathi. If stem is a bird, one side is ex-servicing, the other side is Chakshumathi. Always we try to help kids to spare their time and learn more. Okay. So any more questions from anybody?
And last and final question from me, sir.
Yeah, please, Jyoti.
I want something different from this one. I want to ask him what is his Bhavya, what is his hobbies and what are the indoor games or anything he prefer or he play?
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
I have a range of hobbies. So over the years, I've done stuff like Model UN, elocution, debating. I've also done quizzes in technology and general knowledge. I've also done hackathons and coding related competitions. So I think I'm much more of a geek than a hobbyist, to be truthful. I don't play very many sports, whether indoor or outdoor or audio games, but that's just me. But other than that, I like reading, a little bit of music sometimes, and I'm a simple person in that sense, nothing fancy.
I have one question, that which software do you think is more compatible with math and science, JAWS or NVDA?
I don't have sufficient experience with JAWS to comment on it, but I can say this, NVDA has never disappointed me.
Okay, thank you.
And what is hackathon?
A hackathon is a limited time coding competition wherein you're given a topic and you as part of a team need to come up with an innovative solution that solves a problem in that area. So there's nothing related to hacking in the sense of cybersecurity, but it's a fun event.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Bhavya, what do you think? Is all the students should learn coding?
I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
I think my main advice to blind students outside of mathematics is just in general, spread your branches wide. When I think at this age even, I'm still young and I deserve to explore. So at university, I will be taking, I don't know, classes in philosophy and linguistics and just explore different fields, because the four walls of your classroom just can't teach you everything that is there in the world. So whether it is coding that fascinates you and you just want to see how you find the fundamentals of Python programming, or if it is a quiz competition and you want to go deep into all of the topics that it covers, or if it is just, I don't know, a history lesson in which you want to understand all of the things that happened, the events that transpired, go deep and go wide.
Good, good. Can you explain your steps you did to get your admission to Stanford?
I can do that in brief right now, but for a fuller explanation, I have done an interview about the entire US admissions process. Perhaps it would be more useful to link to that.
Okay.
I can send you the file.
Okay. I will share with everybody. No issue.
All right.
Oh, great, great. Any more questions, friends? If there is no more questions, we need to wind up the section.
Thank you so much for that comment in the
Yeah,
chat.
yeah. Let me say a big thanks to Bhavya Shah on behalf of Chakshumathi and Out of the Box Tech Trainers and Benetech Corporation and Bookshare International, because Bookshare and Benetech are one of the major supporters of Chakshumathi and all our STEM projects. So let me thank Bookshare out of box for supporting us very well. And thank you all for participating today and make use of that program. And friends from Bangladesh, friends from Nigeria, all of them were present. And we will do any extent of help for Nigerian students. You can just contact us and we can do special training sessions for you guys. Okay. So thank you very much, Bhavya, and all the best. And we will see you quite often.
Thank you for the
Thank you
opportunity
all.
to speak, for your wishes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chakshumathi is a charitable trust and will not take any donations or funding for any of our operations or campaigns. We are supported by thousands of catalysts who are volunteering in our projects as resource persons and cause supporters. To be free from expenses, we do not run an office and function purely from cloud-based technologies and operations. Team Chakshumathi@gmail.com www.icefreescience.com Copyright free to copy. Kindly spread the Salamanca Campaign Treaty message for inclusive education and to transform all special schools to integrated schools and to stop discrimination towards children with visual impairments and provide them equal rights.